leader. Today, it's the third episode of a series designed specifically for your team leaders who are responsible to lead people, processes, and profit centers. They come in all shapes and sizes and backgrounds, and they bring their own unique style and culture to your small business every day. But how are they doing? Really? Are they feeling competent, confident, and on track? Do they worry that they're not cut out for this role? Do they struggle with understanding what being a leader means? Or are they wreaking havoc across your business? Join me in this series that will provide you and your team leaders with some reinforcement so they're more clear and able to focus on what matters most as they continue to evolve into effective leaders. If you missed the first or the second episode that aired previously, go back and check those out too. Those were all about how confrontation is your friend and how complacency is your enemy when you are in a leadership role. Today's topic, communication is your core skill. And by the way, it's also a life skill, one that will take you far, both at home, at work, and in your community. The better you are at communicating, the easier it is to lead people. And the more willing people are to listen to you. I mean, come on. You're being counted upon to take speaking, writing, and how you use nonverbal cues to convey a clear message with everyone you interact with each day. And you know, at Stacking Your Team, you can learn to improve all of this. So let's get started. Welcome to the Stacking Your Team podcast. If you are a woman who owns a small business and you'd like to learn how to lead your team so they don't need you to hold their hand, you are in the right place. I'm your host, Shelley Warren. I've led winning teams in retail, innovative technical teams at a Fortune 50 corporation, and coached many remote teams to win at work. And in case you're wondering, no one escapes team troubles, including me. You already know that the people side of running your business can be tough. I'm here to help. So let's jump into today's episode with a little reminder that the team that got you here may not be the team that will get you there. You'll notice in this series of episodes that I'm referring to you as team leaders. At Stacking Your Team, I consider team leaders to be people who are being paid to lead people, processes, and profit centers. Now, you may or may not be client-facing. You might be billable or non-billable. Your actual role title might be something like lead trainer, operations manager, clinical director, or senior store manager, technical designer, lead hygienist. Maybe you're a law firm administrator or something similar. It's not about your role title, it's about the outcomes that you deliver. You've been tasked to improve the business, and that requires you to lead. So whether you are new to your leadership role or you're a long-standing leader, you're going to find these topics relevant. So let's begin with this. Communication is your core skill when you are in a leadership role because it's the heart of successful small business leadership. There's simply no way to reach whatever definition of success you and your founder has without it. I am sure you've seen businesses fold, struggle terribly with people quitting, and constantly being sidetracked by drama. You know, strife stems from people having bad information, overly speculating, and people running rogue because their leadership team cannot share pertinent information timely or clearly, and it leaves everyone feeling lost in the dark, overlooked, invisible. So they'll start doing what they think is the right thing. Sometimes it's a great action step. Other times it derails bigger plans and goals unbeknown to them. And that kickstarts you to feel disappointed, frustrated, and that can even morph into you and the team feeling resentful. So as a team leader, what can you do? Well, how about going back to basics with this? It's all about learning how to speak, write, and use nonverbal communication, such as body language, to help people understand what you're trying to tell them. Let's take a minute to look at how body language can derail everything you're striving for. I once worked with a manager who I reported to, and my peers nominated me to speak to him about his excessive smiling. Yeah, I'm not kidding. You see, he had a deep habit of smiling constantly, and it was very unnerving for people around him because there were definitely times where smiling was simply inappropriate. I believe he was trying to cope with being in a role that he found difficult. You see, it was the people part of his role that made him nervous. He was fine crunching numbers and such, but having to deal with people every day, give people feedback, or connect with others was hard for him. So he overcompensated by smiling all the time when he was around people. So I had to tell him in so many words to knock it off. I explained that people were losing trust in him because his smile conveyed one message, while the words coming out of his mouth were the opposite. So picture this. He's telling someone that they're not getting a raise and all the reasons why with a massive smile on his face. Yeah, confusing, right? Awkward? Hell yes. Wondering what happened? Well, he listened to the feedback with a smile and admitted to me that he was uncomfortable more often than not interacting with the team. He promised to pay more attention to this habit, but a few months later, he moved on to another site and another role where he had less interaction leading people. Here's another example. Back in my corporate days, we had a woman who was steering the ship for all of us. We didn't often have women rise to that level of leadership, so she was definitely worth watching. And everyone did, keeping their eyeballs affixed on her. Some people watched her, waiting for her to mess up. Others watched her to learn from how she navigated this important breaking glass ceiling role. Here was the problem. She was young, beautiful, and had lovely long blonde hair, which she played with a lot. Jeepers. Without realizing it, she was telling people that she was nervous, apprehensive, and many people lost trust in her and didn't take her very seriously because of it. And so, you guessed it, I was asked by a senior leader to speak to her about this and her other habit of wearing what was considered to be inappropriate clothing for a manufacturing site. I had to tell her in so many words to knock it off. And I was impressed that she listened to me and actually made significant changes to her clothing immediately. And I also noticed that she tried very hard to stop playing with her hair. Sure, sometimes she'd slip, but most of the time she did her own course correcting when she found herself wanting to do it. Now, this could have gone very badly for me in both of these situations. But this was becoming my secret sauce, and I was learning how to have uncomfortable conversations with senior leaders by being sensitive to how I did it. And you can too. Both of these leaders were acting in such a way that was very comfortable for them. Actually, 100% focused on helping themselves feel more comfortable in sticky situations. However, those coping skills were demonstrating something totally off-brand for their goals and intentions and the respect that they were trying to gain. It was all impacting how we saw and felt about them. After all, we wanted to follow them. But when a leader's habits and behaviors are so off-putting, people can find it difficult to get past it, which then leads them to tuning out, even avoiding the person, and that's going to go directly against your ability to succeed in your leadership role. Do you have a habit of saying something or doing something that's sending mixed messages to your team? This is a great question to ask a few of your team members who you know will provide that kind of feedback to you honestly. Go ahead, ask them. And why is this such a big deal? Well, because you want to build trust with your team rather than being that kind of person who says one thing but does another and confuses people rather than calming them down or instilling confidence in them. When you have trouble speaking to your team members and sharing information, just think about how much time is wasted by people speculating amongst their peers about what was that supposed to mean? Or did she really say that? Or maybe she's joking or exaggerating. And of course, my favorite, I'm confused now more than ever. Yikes! You don't want your team talking about you in that way. Now, you've likely worked with someone, or maybe it was one of your teachers or sports coach, who you found it difficult to understand what they wanted from you. Maybe they used terms and language that you weren't familiar with, or maybe they switched up their speaking style so often that you never really knew what they'd come up with next. Some people get so flustered by speaking that they actually say very little. You know, those people who are incredibly vague, leaving wide gaps between thoughts that you're left to try and fill in with your own speculation, and it can feel like one giant puzzle every time you converse with them. So you avoid them as much as possible. Now, what if you were that leader that people felt this way about? Take a second here to think about people who you believe are great communicators. They probably have mastered this fundamental skill. They know who their audience is. Yeah, they know how to match their speaking and writing style to the people right in front of them. They also likely tried a few different ways of connecting with people and failed, but learned from it and then made adjustments. You see, as I mentioned at the start of this episode, communication is a life skill. And once you refine it and then you keep wanting to improve it, the more successful you'll be in everything that you do. So what does knowing your audience actually mean? And sometimes this can also be referred to as reading the room. Both refer to knowing how to relate to whomever is right in front of you. Think of it this way. You wouldn't ask your 6-year-old child to distribute these cupcakes to her friends at the picnic table. No, you'd say, okay, go ahead. It's time to share your cupcakes with your friends. It's the same at work. You need to adjust your speaking style, your words and phrases, so that your team sees and hears that you can relate to them. So by saying things like, hey, I know this is a big ask right now, or hey, I see that many of you are working overtime to complete this, or I'd love to hear what you think about this. You've got the most experience with that client. Or this one. Hey, I see that this topic isn't lighting a fire under any of you. So how can we spice this up to help you want to get involved? You know, by switching it up, reading the room, watching their body language, and considering what's in it for them, it really goes a long way in showing your team that you know what they're up against and you know what they're really great at. Now, it's common to see leaders revert to sports analogies in an attempt to relate to their audience. This can work really well, and it can also tank. It does help to have a few analogies in your back pocket that would be meaningful to your team to help them connect the dots and get more aligned with what you're telling them. You can use other stories that relate outside of sports. Why not consider breaking down your thoughts and messaging into ingredients in a recipe, or using a home renovation as a visual, or parts of a vehicle, or planning a trip to put your team into a conversation that connects them while they are more interested to listen and learn from you. This style of communicating can also help you strip down all the fluff and get right to the point. Because that's another complaint team members have about their leaders who are not great at communicating. You know it. They tend to drone on and on and on and use lots of filler words that seems like they're trying to stall and collect their thoughts. You know, people are easily annoyed by this, and it's our job as leaders to get better and better at getting to the point and staying on track. And we can do this by being more prepared ahead of time instead of always winging it, especially for critical conversations. Hey, I'm pressing pause here for a minute to let you know, if you didn't already, that the Stacking Your Team Team Leader Program is available for you to take advantage of. If you are a leader at a small business, you're not the owner, and yet you're committed to your role and you want to build a career at that small business, here's your chance. Why not up-level your impact through relevant and easy-to-apply trainings, some of my signature tools and frameworks that will save you time and provide an easy way to be consistent while also amping up your effectiveness in your role. And yes, I am your coach, and you'll have monthly and quarterly live sessions with me. Your next best step is to talk with your leader and request that she support you in your development and enroll you today inside the Stacking Your Team Leader Program. It's affordable and exactly what you need to excel in your role. Don't believe me? Check out the testimonials on the website. And hey, you don't need to be in corporate to have a career or leap over into entrepreneurship. You can have a very worthwhile career in small business, and I'm here to help you. Okay, let's get back to the episode. One aspect of being a good communicator is being a good listener so that you can become more comfortable and effective with hosting those difficult conversations that I like to call adult conversations at work. These conversations go smoothly when you also consider who your audience is, how best to relate to them, and by choosing words and phrases that connect rather than alienating them. Hosting those adult conversations can become your secret sauce, something that makes you stand out at work because for most people, this is not an ability, but you can learn it through practice. Now, you know that there are many times where you've got to say no, or no, not right now, or your employment contract is ending today, or you'll not be moving forward in our interview process, or you'll not be getting a raise, or you need to significantly improve in this area by month's end. Now, giving feedback and receiving it is the number one trouble spot for people at work. And for some people, it's their trouble spot at home too. But you are in a leadership position, so everyone is counting on you to develop this skill set. Inside the Stacking Your Team coaching programs, this is always a hot topic, and I'm often asked to provide words and phrases to my clients to help them know what to say and how to say it when they've got a performance issue with someone on their team. That's why I created the Ask Shelley script bundles that are available in our programs or directly from the website. I want to help you effectively speak with your team members without sounding like you're reading from a script. It's a life skill, and it's great to see my clients improve their confidence to walk into these difficult conversations, and it's also wonderful to hear that their team members listened and then took action on the feedback that they shared with them. Oh my gosh, such a win-win. But what about this? Tech. Yeah, love it or hate it, technology is not going anywhere but forward, and seemingly fast. Learning how to leverage these tools can save anyone a ton of time, but it can also be a significant distraction, and it can also trigger negative emotions for some people. Here's what I mean by that. When leaders overuse team communication tools like Voxer, Slack, and other chat functionality, the pinging sound or the instant notifications sliding across their laptops can be alarming and can morph into a sense of dread. Yeah, I'm not kidding, and I speak from real experience on this. Excessive use of these digital tools because it feels super quick and super effective to dump your comment, request, your to-do list items, or feedback out of your head and into the channel for someone to then have to stop what they were doing and code switch into paying attention to you and what you want can actually derail your team instead of keeping the momentum going. Now, I am sure that you've set up expectations that include not wanting your team members to react to every notification. But how well are you and your team abiding by that? Have you created a monster? And some people are taking advantage of the notion that, well, I've done my part, now it's in your hands. Or, I sent you a Slack. Or, didn't you see my Slack? Or, my biggest pet peeve about using these digital tools is using them instead of hosting an actual quality one-to-one. No, You cannot abdicate your duty to meet face-to-face with your team members by using an app instead. That's not good leadership. It's exactly the opposite, and your team knows it. As we've all learned over the years using email, digital tools can save time, but they can also create a lot of drama when people misunderstand the tone of our words and phrases. Sometimes people are rushed and don't take care to choose their words well, either written or verbally, and it can sideswipe our working relationships. So take care using these tools and check in with yourself and your leadership team on how you are all role modeling the use of them. After all, you don't want to say one thing, then do another and confuse your team. And you don't want to hold your team accountable with feedback to act a particular way or stop doing a specific thing while you don't. If you take one thing away from today's episode, let it be this. Communication is your core skill because it's the heart of successful small business leadership. It all comes down to evolving into that leader who has great communication and relationship building skills. These can be mastered through practice, learning, and having the tools that boost your confidence to try a different approach with your team. When you become that leader who's focused on ensuring that every person on your team feels seen and heard, you're showing them that you're invested in their success more than your own, because you know that when they succeed, you will too. And a big part of what you're being paid to do is to be able to provide direction, coaching, and share insight to move the business forward by breaking down big goals into smaller ones, acknowledging wins, helping people to overcome challenges and grow themselves because you explain things really well enough for them to understand what it is that they need to do next, why it's important, and how to take their next best step. That's how leaders become great communicators, learning how to do it, taking advantage of trainings on the topic, reading, listening to other leaders, and deciding what you like about their style and what you don't. Applying what you've learned, trying new approaches, failing, then getting up again and asking for that do-over to try one more time. Before I send you off today, I want to encourage you to consider setting up an expectation with your team members to listen to this episode and then talk about it in your next team meeting or one-to-one. If you are a team leader, what did this episode spark for you? Why not reflect on it and then discuss your thoughts with your direct leader or other members of your leadership team? I'm sure they'll be keen to hear from you. Communication is your core skill when you are in a leadership role. Now, as I mentioned at the start of this episode, this is part of a series of episodes that are designed for team leaders. So if you haven't subscribed to the Stack of Your Team podcast yet, do it. I also want to prompt you to consider enrolling in the Stack of Your Team Team Leader Program. While you're checking that all out on the website, do yourself another big favor and grab the Ask Shelley script bundles so that you have the words and phrases that will help you talk with people without sounding like you're reading a script. You know, leadership can be exciting, challenging, and lonely at times, so don't go it alone. Let me help you create the team and the leadership structure that you've been craving. So until next time, remember, if you have a dream, you need a team. So let's get stacking yours today.